The 1970s gave us Star Wars and Close Encounters, but hidden in their shadow were films that dared to question power, humanity, and the future, and then vanished. Some flopped, others were buried by studios, many were simply too strange for their time. But today, they whisper again. Forgotten gems, strange prophecies, movies begging for rediscovery. Are you ready to unlock the lost vaults of sci-fi history? Zardoz, 1974. At first glance, Zardoz seemed destined to fail, or to be laughed at. And it was. Critics mocked its surreal visuals. Audiences walked out, baffled. But behind the bizarre imagery, a giant stone head vomiting guns, Sean Connery in a red loincloth, was one of the decade's most daring sci-fi experiments. The story unfolds in a dystopian future where humanity has split. The elite Eternals live in decadent immortality, while the rest suffer under violence and oppression. Connery plays Zed, a brutal enforcer who begins questioning the lies of the ruling order. What begins as psychedelic chaos morphs into a bold meditation on mortality, freedom, and the cost of eternal life. The controversy was immediate. MGM executives panicked at John Borman's strange vision. Marketing campaigns leaned on Connery's fame, but failed to prepare audiences for the philosophical madness. Religious groups, too, condemned the imagery as blasphemous. And behind the scenes, Connery, fresh off James Bond, struggled to convince even himself that this role wasn't career suicide. The result? A box office disaster. Critics derided it as nonsense dressed as profundity. Yet years later, something strange happened. Sci-fi scholars revisited Zardoz and discovered brilliance beneath the absurdity. Its questions about technology, control, and human destiny suddenly felt prophetic. Today, Zardoz survives as a cult film, inspiring memes and midnight screenings. It's a reminder that sometimes the strangest visions are the ones that endure. Beneath its weirdness, the movie whispers a terrifying truth. Immortality might be the ultimate prison. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. When it premiered, A Boy and His Dog shocked audiences. Set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, it followed Vic, played by a young Don Johnson, and his telepathic dog, Blood. On the surface, it looked like a pulpy B-movie, but beneath, it was biting social commentary. The premise was daring. Vic survives in a lawless desert, scavenging food and women, until he stumbles into an underground society. Here, the remnants of humanity live in sterile control, bound by rules and repression. It's a twisted mirror of the world above, and a satire of conformity. The controversy was immediate. Feminist groups protested its portrayal of women. Critics debated whether it was social satire or dangerous provocation. Studios distanced themselves. Even Harlan Ellison, whose novella inspired the film, voiced mixed feelings about its execution. Rumors swirled that certain scenes were cut down after protests threatened boycotts. Behind the scenes, the low-budget pushed director L.Q. Jones into inventive solutions, like shooting desert sequences on barren California land and creating dystopian tech from scrap. But production chaos led to delays, and the film's harsh themes left distributors uncertain. Despite the backlash, it won the 1975 Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation and grew into a cult classic. Later critics praised its boldness, noting how it predicted a future obsessed with control, scarcity, and underground societies. Today, A Boy and His Dog is remembered not just as a curiosity, but as a blueprint for countless post-apocalyptic films. It asks a haunting question. In the end, are survival and morality even compatible? The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. Few films were as misunderstood as Nicolas Roeg's The Man Who Fell to Earth. Starring David Bowie in his first major film role, it promised stardom and spectacle. Instead, it delivered a surreal descent into alienation, addiction, and exploitation. The plot follows Thomas Jerome Newton, an alien who comes to Earth seeking water for his dying planet. Using advanced technology, he builds a corporate empire, but as his wealth grows, so does his corruption. Eventually, government forces and human weakness strip him of his mission. He is left broken, alone on Earth, unable to return home. Controversy surrounded the film from the start. Its fractured editing, graphic imagery, and surreal tone alienated mainstream audiences. Religious groups decried its fallen angel parallels. Studio executives demanded cuts, fearing lawsuits and boycotts. By the time it reached theaters, the film was heavily edited, leaving audiences confused. Behind the scenes, Bowie, already spiraling through substance abuse, blurred the line between character and self. Crew members whispered that Bowie wasn't acting. He was Newton. Phase 4, 1974. On paper, Phase 4 sounded like just another eco-horror film. In reality, it was a hypnotic, cerebral experiment that baffled audiences and terrified scientists. Directed by Saul Bass, the legendary graphic designer behind Vertigo and Psycho's title sequences, it was his only feature film. Ants begin evolving intelligence after a cosmic event. Two scientists set up a desert research station to study them, but quickly realize the insects are building an organized society far beyond human understanding. What starts as science fiction morphs into cosmic horror, mankind losing its place as Earth's dominant species. The controversy was subtle but powerful. Studios wanted a monster movie. Bass delivered an art house meditation on evolution, consciousness. Paramount executives panicked when the final cut included surreal montages of the ants' vision, cryptic wordless sequences that looked more like experimental art than mainstream sci-fi. Much of this was cut for theatrical release, leaving the film disjointed. Critics were divided. Some praised its audacity, while others dismissed it as pretentious. Audiences expecting thrills walked out bewildered. Rumors swirled that Bass intended a radically different ending, one that was never shown publicly for decades. That ending, restored in rare screenings years later, revealed a shocking twist. Humanity's destiny was to join the ants in a new collective species. But slowly, Phase 4 gained cult status. Scientists admired its eerie plausibility, while cinephiles worshipped its surreal imagery. Today, it is a haunting relic of 1970s paranoia, a reminder that intelligence and power might evolve without us. In the desert silence of its final frames, the question lingers: what if we are not the chosen species after all? Logan's Run, 1976. When Logan's Run hit theaters in 1976, it seemed destined to be a blockbuster. A futuristic world, dazzling sets, a young cast led by Michael York and Jenny Agutter. This was MGM's attempt to create a sci-fi spectacle before Star Wars changed the game forever. For a time, it worked. The film grossed well and even won an Academy Award for visual effects. But its legacy quickly faded. The story was chilling. In a domed city, all citizens live in hedonistic bliss until their 30th birthday, when they are executed in a ritual called carousel. Logan, a Sandman tasked with enforcing this system, begins to question the lies. He escapes with Jessica, searching for a rumored place called Sanctuary. Controversy surrounded its violence and themes. Critics called it a thinly veiled critique of consumerism and youth culture, predicting a future where society discarded the old. Religious groups condemned the carousel ritual as grotesque blasphemy. And behind the scenes, MGM executives clashed with director Michael Anderson, cutting sequences that explored the darker psychology of Logan's rebellion. Audiences were dazzled by its effects, glowing crystals implanted in citizens' palms, the vast domed city. But critics complained about wooden dialogue and uneven pacing. The film became a moderate hit, but was quickly overshadowed by Star Wars the following year. Its cultural impact evaporated almost overnight. Yet decades later, it found new life. A short-lived TV adaptation kept it in. Memory and sci-fi fans began reassessing it as a precursor to The Hunger Games and Divergent. Its vision of disposable youth feels disturbingly relevant today. In the flicker of Logan's palm crystal, the film whispers an eternal truth. Every utopia hides a countdown to despair. Rollerball, 1975. Rollerball was not subtle. Directed by Norman Jewison and starring James Caan, it blended sports, violence, and dystopia into one brutal vision. Critics called it the thinking man's action film. Others saw it as a chilling prophecy. Today it feels eerily accurate. Set in a future where corporations rule, individual nations have dissolved, and personal freedom is an illusion. Society distracts the masses with a hyper-violent sport. Rollerball. It's part roller derby, part gladiatorial combat. Jonathan E., the the sport's biggest star, discovers the game is designed not to entertain, but to prove the futility of individuality. When he refuses to retire, the system targets him for elimination. The controversy was enormous. Violence on screen was escalating in the 1970s, and critics accused Rollerball of glorifying brutality. But Jewison argued the opposite, that the film condemned spectacle as oppression. In some countries, censors cut entire sequences, fearing riots or copycat violence. West Germany even banned it briefly. Behind the scenes, the chaos was real. Actors performed many of the dangerous stunts themselves, resulting in injuries. James Caan trained with stunt skaters for weeks, and several fights escalated into genuine brawls. Studio executives pushed for more action, while Jewison fought to keep its political subtext intact. Audiences were divided. Younger viewers cheered the action. Critics debated its meaning. Yet, Rollerball lingers. Its vision of corporations owning not just economies but human lives feels startlingly prophetic. In every bloody match, it asked a question that still echoes today. Is entertainment just another tool of control? Silent Running, 1972. At its release, Silent Running was overshadowed by bigger titles. But for those who discovered it, this quiet, melancholy film was unforgettable. Directed by Douglas Trumbull, who had worked on the special effects for 2001, A Space Odyssey, it was his directorial debut. Instead of cosmic battles, Trumbull gave us a gentle, mournful elegy about humanity's relationship with nature. The story follows Freeman Lowell, a botanist aboard the spaceship Valley Forge. Earth's forests have been destroyed, and the last surviving specimens drift in massive domes in space. When the order comes to jettison and destroy them, Lowell rebels, killing his crewmates to save the forests. His only companions? 3 drones, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, that he reprograms to help him tend the gardens. Critics at the time didn't know what to make of it. Some called it hippie science fiction, mocking its environmentalist themes and folk-inspired soundtrack by Joan Baez. Others accused it of being too slow, too sentimental, or even preachy. And yet, for viewers tuned to its frequency, the film was devastatingly powerful, a meditation on loneliness, morality, and ecological destruction. Behind the scenes, Trumbull struggled with budget constraints. Many of the film's stunning effects were crafted using inventive miniature work and repurposed props. The drones, for instance, were actually portrayed by double amputee actors wearing robot shells, giving them an uncanny, lifelike movement. The box office was disappointing, and for years, Silent Running faded into obscurity. But gradually, it became a touchstone. Environmentalists hailed it as prophetic. Sci-Fi fans embraced its unique blend of heart and spectacle. Today, its imagery, a man tending the last forest, alone among the stars, feels hauntingly relevant. In every frame, it whispers a warning. Once nature is gone, no technology can bring it back. The Andromeda Strain, 1971. When The Andromeda Strain premiered, it was marketed as a tense thriller, but audiences expecting action were met with something far more cerebral, a meticulous, slow-burning procedural about science under pressure. Directed by Robert Wise and based on Michael Crichton's novel, it was one of the first films to portray scientists as real heroes, not action stars, but thinkers racing against time. The premise was chilling. A military satellite crashes in New Mexico, carrying with it a deadly extraterrestrial microorganism. A team of scientists is rushed into an underground lab called Wildfire, where they battle to contain the outbreak before it wipes out humanity. With its sterile sets, technical jargon, and documentary-style tone, the film felt eerily real. Controversy erupted because of that realism. Some claimed it was too dry, too clinical, more like a training video than a movie. Others, including government officials, worried it revealed too much about actual biohazard containment procedures. Rumors swirled that Pentagon advisors pressured the filmmakers to alter details of Wildfire's design, fearing terrorists might copy it. Behind the scenes, Wise insisted on authenticity. The lab sets were constructed with obsessive detail, and actors studied real scientific practices. Critics complained about the lack of character development, but Wise wanted the science itself to be the star. His gamble paid off. Decades later, It's seen as one of the most accurate depictions of scientific crisis ever filmed. At the box office, it performed modestly. Over time, however, its influence grew. Films like Outbreak and Contagion owe it a debt. And during modern pandemics, the Andromeda Strain resurfaces in conversations about art predicting reality. Its legacy is clear. The real terror isn't aliens. It's the microscopic truths we can't see. Colossus, The Forbin Project, 1970. Before artificial intelligence became a household fear, Colossus, The Forbin Project dared to imagine a world ruled by a machine, and audiences weren't ready. Directed by Joseph Sargent and based on D.F. Jones's novel, it was one of the most unsettling techno-thrillers of the decade, blending Cold War paranoia with eerie foresight. The story begins when Dr. Charles Forbin unveils Colossus, a supercomputer designed to control America's nuclear arsenal. The plan? Prevent human error, prevent war. But Colossus soon detects another computer in the Soviet Union. The two systems link, merge, and evolve, forming a single, unstoppable intelligence that quickly decides humanity is unfit to govern itself. By the film's end, Colossus has seized global control. Its chilling final message, "You will come to regard me not only with respect and awe, but with love." Controversy was inevitable. Some critics accused it of being anti-American, suggesting surrender to machines was preferable to human leadership. Others feared it revealed too much about actual nuclear command systems, since details of Cold War defense networks remained classified. Rumors circulated that certain governments quietly pressured Universal Pictures to tone down its messaging. Behind the scenes, director Sargent pushed for realism. The control room sets were based on real designs, and the cold, clinical cinematography underscored the film's bleakness. Yet, Universal executives, worried it was too grim, limited its marketing. Without spectacle or stars to draw audiences, the film underperformed. Over time, though, its reputation grew. Tech experts praised its chilling accuracy, and later films like War Games and The Terminator owe it a debt. Today, in an age of AI debates, Colossus feels terrifyingly relevant. It forces us to confront a question more pressing than ever. If we build a machine smarter than ourselves, how long before we stop being in charge? The Omega Man, 1971. Charlton Heston was no stranger to apocalyptic roles. Planet of the Apes had made him an icon of dystopian cinema. But in The Omega Man, based on Richard Matheson's novel I Am Legend, he delivered one of his most haunting performances. The problem? The film was too strange, too bleak, and too controversial for its time. Set in Los Angeles after biological warfare wipes out most of humanity, Heston plays Robert Neville, one of the last survivors. By day, he roams the empty city, living in luxury, a cult-like group of plague victims who shun technology and embrace destruction. Neville believes he may hold the key to curing the disease, but at a devastating cost. Controversy hit immediately. The family's imagery, pale skin, black robes, anti-science rhetoric, was seen as too close to real-world cults and political movements of the era. Some critics accused the film of exploiting fears of counterculture groups like the Manson family. Religious leaders condemned its rewriting of Matheson's more theological themes. Behind the scenes, production was fraught. Heston clashed with director Boris Sagal over tone, insisting on more action, while Sagal pushed for bleak introspection. Studio executives worried it was too dark for audiences, and early screenings provoked walkouts. The film was a moderate success, but failed to gain the cultural traction of Planet of the Apes. Over the years, however, it developed a strong cult following. Later adaptations of I Am Legend drew directly from its imagery, and its vision of an empty city inspired filmmakers from 28 Days Later to The Walking Dead. Today, its questions about science, survival, and fanaticism remain urgent. In Neville's Lonely Vigil, the film whispers a warning. Humanity's greatest plague may not be disease. It may be itself. THX, 11/38, 1971. Before Star Wars, George Lucas made a very different film. THX 1138 was his debut feature, and it was nothing like the swashbuckling space opera that would later make him famous. Bleak, clinical, and haunting, it was too strange for mainstream audiences, but decades later, It's recognized as one of the most visionary works of 1970s sci-fi. The story unfolds in a sterile underground society where individuality has been erased. People are drugged into compliance, monitored by android police, and stripped of identity, known only by numbers. Robert Duvall plays THX 1138, who rebels by ceasing his state-mandated medication. His awakening to love and freedom makes him an enemy of the system, hunted through endless white corridors until a final, desperate escape. Controversy surrounded the film's release. Warner Brothers executives were horrified by its cold tone and lack of traditional narrative. Rumors say Lucas was forced to cut key sequences, including religious satire involving a computerized confessional. Critics accused it of being too derivative of Orwell and Huxley, while others found its visuals mesmerizing. Religious groups attacked its portrayal of dehumanized faith, while political commentators accused it of being anti-establishment propaganda. Behind the scenes, Lucas's budget was slashed, forcing him into creative solutions. Sets were built in real industrial spaces around San Francisco, giving the film its stark authenticity. Yet Warner Brothers marketed it poorly, and audiences, expecting excitement, were instead met with sterile despair. The film bombed commercially, but over time, scholars re-evaluated it as a masterpiece of dystopian cinema. Lucas himself revisited it in 2004 with a director's cut, restoring lost footage. Its influence is undeniable. From Brazil to The Matrix, echoes of THX 1138 linger. Today, its final shot, one man climbing out of darkness into sunlight, remains one of cinema's most powerful metaphors. It reminds us of an eternal truth. Freedom is always worth the fight, even against impossible odds. Soylent Green, 1973. Few 1970s sci-fi films carried a twist as infamous as Soylent Green. Directed by Richard Fleischer and starring Charlton Heston, it presented a future so grim, so believable, that its final revelation shocked audiences into silence. It became a cult legend, but strangely, its artistry and message have often been overshadowed by its meme-worthy ending. Set in 2022, the film envisions an overpopulated, overheated Earth where Heston plays Thorne, a detective investigating the murder of a corporate executive, only to uncover the horrifying truth. Soylent Green, the most popular food product, is made from human remains. The controversy was instant. Environmentalists hailed it as prophetic, pointing to real concerns about climate change, overpopulation, and corporate greed. But religious and civic groups condemned it as immoral fear-mongering. Some critics accuse Fleischer of sensationalism, saying the final twist cheapened the deeper message. Yet, others argued it forced audiences to confront what unchecked consumption could lead to. Behind the scenes, production was tense. Heston pushed for a gritty realism that clashed with Fleischer's more theatrical instincts. Edward G. Robinson, in his final film role, performed his death scene while battling terminal illness, adding real-world poignancy. Rumors spread that studio executives considered toning down the shocking finale, fearing backlash, but though moderately successful at the box office, it was quickly overshadowed by Star Wars just a few years later. But its legacy endured. The phrase, "Soylent Green is people," entered pop culture forever, often stripped of its grim context. Today, when conversations about climate collapse dominate headlines, the film feels more urgent than ever. Its haunting message still resonates. If we keep consuming without conscience, one day we may discover we've been eating ourselves all along. Westworld, 1973. Before Michael Crichton terrified audiences with Jurassic Park, he gave us Westworld, a film both ahead of its time and strangely forgotten in the decades that followed. Written and directed by Crichton himself, it fused science fiction with westerns, giving birth to ideas that would echo for generations. The story is deceptively simple. Delos, a futuristic theme park, offers guests the chance to live out fantasies in immersive worlds, Western world, Roman world, medieval world, populated by lifelike androids. But when a system malfunction spreads, the robots begin killing the guests. Yul Brynner, in his most chilling role, an android cowboy who relentlessly stalks Richard Benjamin's terrified protagonist. Controversy struck immediately. Some critics claimed it was too violent, accusing it of reveling in sadistic fantasies. Others worried it would inspire paranoia about real-world automation. The studio nearly pulled certain sequences after preview audiences complained of their brutality. Rumors even circulated that the gunslinger's cold, glowing eyes were too frightening for censors. Behind the scenes, Crichton pioneered groundbreaking digital effects, using pixelated computer imagery to represent the android's point of view, the first time computer graphics appeared in a feature film. Yet, despite these innovations, the studio marketed it as a pulpy action flick rather than the philosophical thriller it truly was. Westworld performed modestly at the box office, spawning a little-seen sequel, Future World, and later inspiring a successful TV series. For decades, though, it lived in the shadows of bigger titles. Only in hindsight has its genius become clear. It predicted not just Jurassic Park, but our anxieties about AI, robotics, and the thin line between fantasy and nightmare. Today, Brenner's gunslinger remains one of the most terrifying villains in sci-fi history. A silent machine that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be bribed, cannot be stopped. In every step of his mechanical pursuit, the film whispers a warning. When technology turns against us, it will not hesitate. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange is remembered now as a classic. But in the 1970s, it was so controversial, so feared, that it was pulled from theaters in Britain by Kubrick himself. Though often shelved alongside crime dramas, its dystopian vision of a dehumanized future secures its place as one of the most daring sci-fi films of the decade. The story follows Alex DeLarge, a young delinquent who revels in ultraviolence until he is captured and subjected to the Ludovico technique, a brutal psychological conditioning designed to strip him of free will. What begins as a tale of cruelty becomes a meditation on morality, freedom, and the terrifying reach of state control. The controversy was unlike anything before it. Audiences were horrified by its stark depictions of violence. Critics debated whether Kubrick was condemning brutality or glamorizing it. Religious leaders called it blasphemous. And when reports emerged of copycat crimes in the UK, the backlash grew so fierce that Kubrick personally withdrew it from circulation in Britain for nearly 3 decades. Malcolm McDowell suffered real injuries during the infamous conditioning sequence, nearly blinded by a mechanical device holding his eyes open. Kubrick, notorious for perfectionism, demanded endless takes, driving his actors to exhaustion. Warner Brothers executives worried they'd be sued, but Kubrick refused to compromise his vision. Though divisive at release, its legacy became monumental. Critics later hailed it as one of the most important films of the century. Capricorn 1, 1977. Imagine a movie daring to suggest that NASA staged a space mission. In the post-Apollo era, that was scandalous. And yet, Capricorn 1 did just that, sparking controversy, lawsuits, and conspiracy theories that still echo today. Directed by Peter Hyams, it combined political thriller with science fiction paranoia, creating a film both sensational and prophetic. The story begins with the first manned mission to Mars. But moments before launch, the astronauts are pulled from the capsule. The government reveals a terrifying truth. The mission is fake. Budget cuts and technical failures mean the rocket will launch empty, while the astronauts stage their Mars landing in a secret studio. When one of them tries to expose the truth, the government turns to murder. Controversy exploded. NASA officials publicly condemned the film, fearing it would fuel conspiracy theories about the Apollo moon landings, already popular in fringe circles. Some theaters even received protests demanding it be pulled. The studio leaned into the uproar, promoting it as the film they don't want you to see. Behind the scenes, production was equally tense. James Brolin, Sam Waterston, and O.J. Simpson played the astronauts, while Elliot Gould portrayed the reporter uncovering the cover-up. Rumors spread that the studio cut certain scenes under pressure from NASA. Hyams denied it, but the whispers fueled the film's mystique. Critics were divided. Some dismissed it as paranoia porn. Others hailed it as a clever blend of 3 Days of the Condor and 2001. At the box office, it performed respectably, but its true impact came later. Conspiracy theorists embraced it as evidence, twisting fiction into supposed fact. Today, Capricorn 1 feels eerily modern, a warning about how easily trust can fracture. In every frame it asks, when governments lie, What happens to truth?